Welcome to the Debit This, Credit That podcast with Wheeler Accountants located in San Jose, California. In this podcast, we discuss how to solve accounting challenges in both your personal life and your business. We take an energetic, tech-savvy approach to solving accounting challenges that steal your focus and your time. Now, on to the show with your tech-savvy accounting experts, Matt Wheeler and Michael Bryant.
Welcome to episode 29 of the Debit This, Credit That podcast by Wheeler Accountants with your hosts, Matt Wheeler and Michael Bryant. On this podcast, we're actually going to do something a little different. We're going to gear this towards some of the potential recruits to our firm or staff accountants out there at any firm, and give some career advice we've come up with throughout the years to really help you propel your career forward. But real quick, first, I do want to cover something for the Damn Cancer Foundation. I've mentioned the foundation in the past. And I had a very good friend, David Andrew Pooh Madden. His nickname was Pooh for Winnie the Pooh. We swam together at UCSB, and after we graduated from school, we got jobs, started working. And when Dave was 25 years old, he got diagnosed with osteosarcoma, bone cancer. It was a real rough diagnosis, and it left him unable to work because it was immediately into full-time chemotherapy, heavy chemotherapy treatment. And then he ended up having it spread to his lungs, and there was all kinds of subsequent treatments, and he ultimately passed away from complications as a result of the treatment. But he was unable to work during that time frame, and he got a little bit of disability income, and his parents were able to help a little bit, but it was difficult to make financial ends meet just for the regular costs of trying to pay rent, pay groceries, get to the treatments, all those little things that we often take for granted as we're starting out in our careers and building our savings and that kind of thing. So our foundation really focuses on that young adult age group, the 18 to 35 age group that's completely underserved. There's a lot of charities out there that help kids with cancer. There's a lot of charities out there that focus on specific types of cancer for all age ranges. But we're one of the very few that serves that young adult age group, the 18 to 35, and that's what we focus on. And we're really trying to raise money for those folks. We've raised over $1 million for these recipients. There's over 300 of them. We've given away over $500,000 to. We've also funded $150,000 at USC towards some innovative, non-invasive cancer treatments. So there's a lot going for our foundation, and we're really trying to help people. We're all volunteer basis. We have very minimal administrative and overhead costs. You can look up our 990 on the internet, and look at the financials of the foundation, but we pride ourselves on having pretty much 99 pennies on the dollar going towards the recipients or being reserved for future cancer treatment research, funding, and that sort of thing. So we're just trying to make an impact here, and we could really use your help. You can come to our website to visit it to learn more, www.dam-cancer.org. Or you can follow us on social media at damcancer on Twitter, or on Instagram, we're at dam_cancer. We also have a Facebook page. We do our best on our volunteer, budget to try and keep those things updated and going. But, go to one of those places to learn more about the foundation. And if you can send some money to the foundation to help us out, we'd really appreciate that. We want to help as many young adults as possible. We're actually helping people all over the country now, not just in California where we started. So it's really exciting to see that we're making an impact in people's lives. We get letters from recipients and former recipients thanking us for what a huge difference we've made. And it's because of you and the money that you donate to the foundation that makes that happen. So really appreciate it. And that's why I do this plug each time. I'm a board member on the foundation and one of the volunteers, obviously. And we thank you for helping make a difference there.
And absolutely a great cause, and so amazing that 99 cents of each dollar that is donated is going directly to the recipients and the research. Really incredible.
Yeah, we're small enough where we can make that happen, So this podcast, like I said, is going to be a little different. We're going to talk about, kind of your journey as a staff accountant. I had a few topics I thought would be relevant to cover. Number one, talking a little bit about your career options in public accounting, some of the pros and cons between big firms, mid-sized firms, and smaller firms. maybe spend a little time talking about things to ask in an interview and how to approach your interview if you are getting an interview with an accounting firm. And then, talking a little bit about if you got the job, dealing with some situations you encounter once you start working that I think could be helpful in terms of your career. And I put some of this stuff together thinking in terms of stuff I wish I knew going into the process myself. So I think it's things I've learned upon reflection now after 14, 15 years of doing this that it would have been helpful to know at the beginning. I've learned them over time, and you may already know some of these things, but I think it's a good refresher on some of this, and then you may pick up some new things. Let's start with talking about career options. So I had a accounting firm professor at UCSB, Professor Sanders. He spent the entire first class of one of our advanced accounting classes talking about your options in public accounting besides the Big Four. And at this point, I'd already made up my mind what I was going to do. I knew about the small firm lifestyle. My father had a firm for 20 years in Cupertino, and I saw the lifestyle he had. He worked hard during tax season. He had more time off in the summers to be there for our swim meets and that kind of thing. And that lifestyle appealed to me. So I knew I wanted to do that. So I was really happy to see Professor Sanders talk about options besides Big Four, because I felt at UCSB at least, and probably at a lot of schools, there's a lot of pressure to go the Big Four route. It seems like it's the thing you're supposed to do. And so he spent an entire day talking about your options besides the Big Four to go into an accounting. And he used his own life as an example. He had started working out at a mid-sized firm. He got some experience, learned the basics, built some skills. He eventually went into private industry for a little while, worked there, and then in his current position, current at the time, back in 2002 or whenever I had the class, he was living in Santa Barbara, and he would teach Tuesdays and Thursdays at the school. He got health benefits. He's working on building his pension. We're learning about pension obligations on the balance sheet in the class. So, this was, he was a big proponent of that. And then during tax season, he'd work, all the rest of the week on his tax practice. But then in the off season, he would work just Wednesdays at his tax practice, and he'd have a 4-day weekend every single week. And I was like, man, that does not sound too bad of a lifestyle. And he's got to be speaking to some people in the class. And I hope a few of my classmates listened to him and took some of his advice. I know a lot were going Big Four, and you can do a lot going to Big Four, but I just thought it was really cool that he focused on options besides Big Four.
Yeah, that's a really neat perspective to get. And, I mean, how amazing to have 4 days off a week outside of season. My experience was definitely different than that. I went to Chico, and there was certainly a big push for going Big Four, actually Big Eight, because I graduated 20 years ago. And so that was actually where I focused my career, was starting out at Ernst & Young in Sacramento.
And there's a lot of pros to going the Big Four route, right? And you can expound on. I mean, you told us some stories that it seemed like it was a pretty fun time, working for Big Four and traveling to cool locations and.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was
Big Eight. Sorry.
Yeah, the Big Eight at the time. It quickly went down to the Big Six after my first year there, but. Yeah, there was a lot of opportunity for travel, and that was one of the things that attracted me to the position, and that sounded really, really great to be able to travel. I was traveling down to Southern California, out to Utah, to Washington, and even going to Hawaii. And for the first couple of years, that was like, wow, that's great. But the travel definitely becomes wearing as you get married and have your first child. That it made that pretty tough.
Yeah, but when you're just graduating school, it's fun.
It was very fun.
The thing I've also noticed from people working at the Big Four is you build a very highly specialized skill set in particular areas, and you get really deep into those areas, and you become basically like an expert, even a national expert. Going that route, you're probably not going to have the luxury of getting that in depth on something at a smaller firm. So at Big Four, there's more opportunity for specialization, I would say, in general.
Yeah, and it can become very specialized. I was not as specialized. I was in the Sacramento office, and we tend to be more of a generalist office. But say like in the San Jose office, they were all tech companies, all public companies, and you would work on 2, maybe 3 clients at max, and you would just be working on certain details within that client.
But you're building skill set within a specific industry that you may then use if you do want to go into private in the future or something. You have that highly specialized skill set that you may not have working for even a mid-sized firm where your experience is more broad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's pros and cons though, right? So part of the con is you are highly specialized, and if that industry falls out of favor, or if you decide you want some sort of career switch or kind of change in the future, or some sort of pivot, I guess you could say, you're going to have to start over from scratch in a new area potentially, or move down a couple rungs, I guess, if you need to build new skills you didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I was at Ernst & Young during the dot-com bust in 2000. And so in the Sacramento office, we were not going to as many lunches and definitely reducing expenses. But in the San Jose office, they laid off half of the staff. So specialized can be good, but as you mentioned, if you get too specialized in a certain area and it becomes out of favor, or something happens with the economy related to that sector, it can make it a lot harder to find a new position.
It's Big Four, high specialization, opportunity for cool travel, that kind of stuff. But you may be stuck doing something. You may be in a situation where the economy turns and you're going to have to fight a little harder for your job, right? What about a mid-size or regional firm? I worked for Harb Levy Weiland in San Francisco for several years before I joined our firm here. We were around 75-ish to 100 people, and I was working there. So I'd call it, mid-sized regional type firm. And I really enjoyed my time there. It was a really great firm. It's now Eisner Amper, so they merged into a larger national firm. But I learned a lot at that firm. I really built my technical skill up substantially over the solo CPA office I came out of before that. So it was an opportunity for me to learn some higher level stuff, learn a bit more of the technical things that were lacking at the small firm, work with bigger dollars on the clients and kind of larger clients in general, kind of delve into that specialization. The office here in San Francisco, the Eisner office now, and Harb, what was called before, a lot of hedge fund work, so a lot of financial services, hedge funds, and I would do a lot of work on the hedge fund owners and the management companies, like personal taxes and that kind of thing. So it was cool to see some of that from that standpoint. I got to get some auditing hours, which are cool. I got to do both audit and tax, where
that was nice. That did not happen at Ernst & Young for sure, and that would not happen at the Big Four now.
Yeah, you're not going to have that luxury of having a toe in each pool. You're going to have to pick one and stick with it for a while, or make a total switch, and again have that step back in your career. So the mid-sized firms can be a pretty good option for you if you want to make a career in public accounting. You probably have potentially faster advancement route than at a Big Four, where if you find the right firm at the right stage in their succession planning and you position yourself well, you can make partner a little sooner probably than a Big Four route.
Yeah, I would imagine a little bit sooner than at a Big Four.
But you're gonna work hard, obviously, and when you get to Big Four, or when you get to the partner level at one of those firms, you're going to be part of a multi-partner firm, right? At least 7, 8 plus partners, probably could be more. So you're going to be one of many that has a vote in how the firm runs and that kind of thing. But you're going to have to, agree on that sort of stuff with your partnership group, versus the smaller firm where maybe you have a bigger chunk of a smaller pie and you get a little more say in how things run if you make it to that partnership level, which is why I ended up coming to our firm.
Yeah, and there are a lot of opportunities at a smaller firm to get a lot of experience in all different aspects of a full service accounting firm. And again, opportunities to advance. But it is really important for candidates coming into a firm to really understand what their succession plan is, because we've seen time and time again where staff will come into a solo practitioner, and that solo practitioner doesn't have any plans to advance anybody. And so making sure that you find a firm that you do have opportunity to move up is really important.
That's true. You have a potential dead end if you go to a real small firm and there's no room for growth. There's already somebody else that's groomed for that position to take over, and if they're relatively young, you may not have opportunity if they're not interested in growing the firm and they just want to build to a certain size and stay there. You also find that more at some of the smaller firms where people are comfortable just staying a certain size and not growing, and no growth means no advancement opportunity. So you need to be prepared for that choice going into it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So you see some of the different pros and cons between big four, big whatever, mid-sized regional firms, some of the smaller firms. So you're going to interview then with as many firms as possible when you're in school to try and find a job, right? What are some of the things that you're going to ask in your interview to show you've done your homework, that you're prepared, and that you should be looking for in the firm that you're interviewing with?
Yeah, and I just want to add on to that interviewing with different types of firms is really important as well. So you do get a flavor for what it is like at a big four versus a regional firm versus a smaller firm. Give yourself that opportunity to be able to experience that.
What stands out to you when a candidate interviews? What questions?
Really doing the research on the firms, making sure that when I interview a candidate and they know about our firm, they specifically ask a question about my background or let me know about one of their strengths that would really benefit our firm in a specific aspect that we work on, it really impresses me. I think that's a really good way to set the stage.
Listening to our podcast. That was good research.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a code word now. The code word is bananas. You need to fit the code word bananas into your interview somehow. If you do that, we know you've done your homework and you're going to have a better chance of getting hired.
There you go. I like that.
What I would ask if I was interviewing at a firm, I'd ask a lot of things, obviously. You want to get a feel for what you're going to be doing. So you want to ask if you have opportunity to do tax or audit or both or some other thing like consulting. I personally, coming from a background of working for a really small firm first, feel that doing a little bit of everything builds a really solid foundation for your career in the future. So I highly recommend trying to find a firm where you can do both. Not to say it's the only way to do it, but it definitely has helped me to have auditing background so I can talk to the larger tax clients about some of the gap issues and that sort of thing, or at least have a general understanding of most of that. I don't need to know it all in depth. That's why I have partners who specialize in those kind of things, but I know enough to converse with the client and provide accurate and good tax advice and notice when there's an issue that comes up that I need to point them towards a gap expert or that sort of thing. So for me, having a little bit of experience in each type of field is an important thing to ask about in the interview.
Yeah, and anybody that knows my background knows that I started out in audit, and there's a running joke in our firm that they don't let me touch any tax return. I can't even touch my own tax return. So I do kind of wish that I would have been able to get that experience, and something I definitely believe in and really stress for our staff and our interns coming in is making sure that they get those experiences, because it's really hard to know what you want to do right out of school. And it will make you really well-rounded, even if you know you want to go into tax to get some audit experience or vice versa. It does make you a well-rounded accountant.
Sure. You also want to be asking about some of the basics of how firms operate in terms of, are there billable hours, goals, requirements for the year for you? Are there overtime requirements at busy season periods of the year and that sort of thing? Does the firm give you time budgets on projects, and asking what a typical budget looks like for a tax return or an audit or that kind of thing? Those answers are going to be very illuminating and revealing for you. One is going to show you some of the culture of what the firm is like. So some firms are very focused on billable hours, target goals, and the time budgets on projects and some of that kind of stuff. And they're going to be more together, so to speak, on that kind of stuff. Other firms are going to be way more loose on that kind of stuff. You also need to know where your strengths and weaknesses are. So if you're type of person that's very on top of that stuff too. You may do well under a system that's going to have those rigid requirements and that kind of thing, because you're going to know exactly where you stand. It's going to be very objective. You're going to have data to help give you feedback on where you're at. Versus if you're more of a creative type and you're not really the type that's consistent and scheduled and regimented and that kind of thing, you may struggle in a firm that's very strict in the billable hours requirements or the overtime requirements or that kind of thing. And you may want to steer away from that kind of firm. So a lot's going to depend on you, but you want to ask some of these questions to get a feel for how the firm operates and the culture of the business side of the accounting firm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really important to ask about training programs and what types of training programs are there? Is it hands-on? Is there formalized training? That's an area where the Big Four, they have a very regimented. I went to nearly 3 weeks of first-year training, and it was all about how Ernst & Young wanted me to document. And I learned a lot, and we did a lot of role play and scenarios. At our firm, we kind of use a balance of on-the-job training, some shadowing, and then we also have additional resources and online tools for additional training.
Training program is important because one of your goals in your career is to be building your skill set constantly. And you want to know what resources the firm's going to put at your disposal to help you along that. You're still going to have personal responsibility for taking charge of your training and advancing your career. So you cannot forget that fact that you need to take the lead on that and make sure you're constantly building your skills and be thinking about whether you're going to get an advanced degree or not, a master's in accounting or taxation, what specific areas of accounting you want to go down, if you want to specialize in something and do outside research, anything like that. You need to still have a plan of action for yourself on that, but you want to know how the firm's going to help you get there and the stuff they do offer. And you probably do want to look for, every firm is going to offer, they're going to say they offer on-the-job training. You may want to ask for specific examples of what that means, to get some good answers. And the more you can ask specific questions and targeted ones and elicit responses to those, you're going to get a feel for how well prepared the firm is to answer those things, whether answers are consistent among the people that are interviewing you or whether they're different, which can be a little bit of a flag. How regimented, again, the firm is or how loosey-goosey things are. You're going to learn a lot from the interview, and you're really interviewing the firm at the same time they're interviewing you. You want to find a good match. So you want to ask a lot of these things and pay attention to the answers. Take notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing you may want to ask about is the use of technology in the firm. So you want to ask about how paperless the environment is, whether they're paperless or paper-based. If they're paper-based, what their plans are for going paperless, because it's pretty obvious at this point that the future is going to be digital and paperless, and just a matter of time when everybody gets there and it's the standard. But you want to get a feel for at what level of paperless system the firm is at. You may want to ask about how much the firm experiments with different types of software or how they evaluate different types of software to help them or their clients, just to get a good understanding of how technologically savvy the firm is. It'll give you a good idea. If you're a computer whiz and you're going into an all paper environment and they're not going to listen to any of your ideas on things to make things more efficient and be better and try new pieces of software, you might find yourself frustrated. Alternatively, if you're going into a firm that's hyper advanced technology, they're at the front, they're always trying new things, and you take longer to learn new things and you do better with consistency and repetition, you may find yourself frustrated that you're constantly having to relearn new things and redo things, and maybe they're going too fast and not looking before they jump and that sort of thing. So you want to get a feel for the technological sophistication of the firm, the software they use, hardware, how they go about doing their audit engagements on the road, what kind of equipment and software they're using there, right? Do they have multiple screens? I have 4, and 4 is like barely enough for me, I feel like. But some people still have a single screen. I can't imagine working on a single screen nowadays for anybody in a paperless environment. But
even out in the field, I have to be taking my second monitor out in the field with me. I couldn't imagine working on one screen. But I did at one point work on one screen, but again, we had more in paper, and now that we're pretty much paperless, it's so beneficial to have those extra screens.
I'd also be asking about some of the networking and business development opportunities the firm has. And do they encourage that type of behavior? They better say yes to that question. They don't. You want to
run the other way.
say thank you and shake hands and walk out the door. But you're going to want to get a feel for what they do to encourage it. Do they really encourage it? Do they just say they do that? What does that mean? Again, as specifics.
Real life examples. Working events.
Real life examples, exactly. Whether the firm reimburses for some of that kind of stuff is important. I want to know what the client mix of the company and the fee levels of the company, basically, because you want to get a feeling for, am I going to be able to bring in business myself, or is it going to be a long way off before that happens? The bigger firm you go to with the higher minimums, the less likely chance, obviously, you're going to be bringing in work at a younger stature in the firm, because you're just not going to have those connections and resources. You're not going to be landing a $100,000 a year fee client when you're 25 years old and the client doesn't think you know anything about accounting, because you don't, relatively speaking. So, but if you're working at a smaller firm where you can bring in smaller clients, you have an opportunity to do some of that kind of stuff. That could, if you're more of the biz dev type and you're really interested in that kind of stuff, that could be pretty exciting opportunity for you. And you want to ask if did they compensate you with like a bonus or anything like that for bringing the work in.
Your new business bonus, and there are a lot more opportunities at the smaller firms to be able to bring in those clients. I know when I was at Ernst & Young, it was like $500,000 audit. And it's like, well, I don't really have the contacts at my level to make those introductions. But at a smaller firm, certainly it's easier to make those connections, and especially when the firm's really sponsoring you to go out there and do that. But it should be noted that isn't necessarily an expectation for everybody either. But so if you are the development type person, then you can have a lot of good opportunities at the smaller firms to do that.
That's true. But you are demonstrating with a lot of these questions also that you're thinking about the business side, about how the firm works, whether it's from a business development side, whether it's from understanding the client mix and how the fees relate to that and where you would fit in there, the billable hours goals, those kind of things. Because ultimately, we run a business, and you're going to move up faster and ultimately be more successful in an accounting firm if you understand how our business operates. And I find that tends to be lacking most often from junior staff and recruits and that kind of thing. Not that it's your fault that you don't know about any of that kind of stuff. You're going to learn over time, but you should have an interest in that. You should understand how what you do every day applies to how the firm is successful from a business standpoint, because that's what drives the firm. We're all here to run a profitable business and make money and create opportunities for clients and staff and everyone else. And you need to be asking about some of those things to understand how you're a part of it, because it's going to help you make better decisions in your career by understanding some of that information ahead of time. If you're oblivious to some of that information, it's going to become a hindrance down the line, especially if you try and move into a manager role or higher. You're going to start to experience issues in areas where if you're not paying attention to the economics from the firm standpoint of how the client relationship's working and that kind of thing, you're going to be unhappy, or the client may be unhappy, the firm may be unhappy, or all three. So you want to be paying attention to that stuff as soon as possible in your career and learning more and more about it.
Yeah, and that's really going to take some initiative and research on the candidate side. They don't really teach that in school. But one of the things that we do is we do the annual the business of a CPA firm, and we invite all staff and all professionals to that meeting to talk about how we run the firm and what the business economics of doing a CPA firm is. And I think that that's a really good insight for all of our staff. And as they move up into the levels, they get more and more involved in it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite CPEs, and we've gotten good feedback.
Yeah, it's really a fun one.
People like it, and they learn a lot more about how the firm works that they didn't know in the past. So.
Yeah, they're seeing all of our business clients and thinking, well, how's that business running, but not applying that to, wow, a CPA firm is actually a business as well.
Exactly. We can apply what we know as accountants to our own business, and we should be, obviously. And so many small firms, accountants, tend to not spend enough time on their business, and that's unfortunate, because they could probably be more successful if they did do that. But it's easy to get stuck doing the work and not focus on your business. You got to remember to take care of yourself too in your own business. And that's why I mentioned earlier about taking the initiative in your career, in your own education. That's part of it. The responsibility is going to ultimately lie on you. You may hit the lottery and get some awesome boss or mentor that can help you out and push you along, but people have stuff they got to do and take care of their own families and that kind of thing. You got to take care of yourself also and really plan accordingly.
Show that initiative. So we kind of talked about like what to do when you're interviewing with a firm and kind of recommendations of questions. So what do you think once they get the job? What should they do next?
It's a great question. You got the job, so now what? Obviously, you need to show up, do all the things that are completely obvious, show up on time, be eager to learn, look respectable, act nice to everyone, don't swear in the office, and all these kind of like things you want to avoid. But one of the things I recommend to all staff, and I do this at the very beginning of the business of a CPA firm, CPE that we do, is I hold up a book, and it's called Managing the Professional Services Firm by David Maister. This book was written 30 years ago, I think, or something like that, and it's about professional services firms. And the title is a little misleading. It says managing the professional services firm, so you think it would apply to, partners and managers and those sort of folks, and it does. It definitely does. But it's never too early to read that book, because that book's going to be a primer on running a professional services firm or being part of a professional services firm and knowing where you fit in that firm. And what I was talking about earlier, where you need to make decisions on a daily basis on things you're doing, you want to make sure you're making the right decisions on how they benefit the firm and that sort of thing. So you want to understand your time creates billable hours, which creates work in process, or WIP as we call it, which turns into billings. How you determine maximize the value on billings to get as much profit as possible for the firm. We're trying to be as profitable of the firm as possible. The difference between high leverage and low leverage work, the different life cycles and phases of firms and clientele, how firms grow and make hiring decisions, how to make decisions on which clients to work with and which clients to, move on. They're no longer a good fit for their firm, that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff is covered in that book, and it's timeless information. It doesn't change in the professional services firm environment. The work changes. The industry can be different. It could be a law firm, could be an architecture firm, it could be an accounting firm, it could be engineering firm, but it's ultimately we're providing service. We sell our time to clients, and you need to understand how that entire process works, and reading that book is an excellent primer on how to learn some of those basics.
Yeah, and you're right. Even as a staff person, just understanding how that works. I read that book when I was a manager, and I actually read it again as a partner, and I think that it really does put you in a different frame of mind, and you're right, it's timeless. It's, our paperless software can change, but the process of how we're running our firm doesn't change.
And again, what you're trying to do as a staff accountant is demonstrate to the seniors and managers and partners that you have that business focus in mind. You will absolutely be on the partner track sooner and ultimately be more successful if you take those things to heart. Some people and some firms don't encourage that stuff in the beginning. Maybe they're just trying to focus you on building your basic technical skills and that kind of thing. And you definitely need to build all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong. And you don't want to put the cart before the horse and just focus on the business stuff and ignore your technical skill. You got to
build your technical skill as well.
You got to be realistic about where you're at. But you want to start that stuff as soon as possible. You want to demonstrate you have an eye for that. Because again, once you get to manager level and above and you're kind of looking towards partner track, you're going to start needing to know that stuff. And it's going to be the same at every firm. You're going to need to know about how to manage a book of business, how to keep it profitable, how to have good collections, how to have no AR problems, how to deliver a good client service. And you want to build as soon as possible when a project's completed so it doesn't wait a long time. And all these kind of customer service things and client management, we call it business hygiene. All these kind of things you want to be able to know how to do properly and effectively. And you'll build the skills over time, but understanding the basics, the concepts, the terminology, all those things, read the book.
Absolutely.
Another thing I think is beneficial to staff accountants at any firm is you need to find out or seek out and find a mentor for your career. hopefully there's someone at your firm that you can seek out and they could be a mentor to you, 2 levels above where you're at. You want someone who's a little bit ahead of the game and they can help you see what's coming, help you provide good decisions. If there's no one at your firm that's going to be a good mentor, go outside your firm. Go to someone at a different firm, a family friend, ask your parents, ask your friends, anybody like that, a role model that you look up to that would invest time in you, that kind of thing. But find a mentor. And then this is the most important part. You must take the initiative to have the mentor help you out and be the mentee. Being the mentee requires a lot of work, and it's going to fall on you. You're asking someone to take time out of their busy schedule of work, family, life, vacation, everything else, to spend time on you as basically long-term investment, right? There's delayed gratification for that person. If they're at your firm, they're spending time on you because ultimately they want you to get to the level where you're going to be a productive member of the firm and add to the firm's bottom line and help grow the firm. That's a long way off. So you're asking a lot. So you want to make sure you treat it seriously, that you're very respectful of people's time, that you follow up and stay on top of things to keep it going. Don't rely on the mentor to do that for you because they won't. Most won't, and they shouldn't. It really belongs to you. And then you want to prepare, do your homework, listen to the advice, keep your ears open, be honest with yourself about the feedback that you get and where you're at with everything. Take advice to heart, seek feedback from other sources, and then use as much as you can to help build your career and move forward and ultimately be the best accountant that you can be. But having a mentor is a huge thing that you need in your career, I think, to move forward. You need someone to go talk to, and it could be valuable to have someone outside the firm because then you can you don't want to be venting all the time, but you want to be able to run scenarios by them and ask for feedback. And, do you think I handled that well? Or what do you think, what do you have done? And some of those kind of things, by someone non-judgmental, that kind of thing. So it's hard to find a good mentor, but they're out there, and you want to invest some time trying to find one.
Yeah, I look as a mentor as like a coach, right? That will provide you feedback on real life situations and help build your career and get you moving in the direction you want to go. A lot of firms have mentoring programs, and even within the mentoring program, the mentee still needs to really lead that to be able to get the most out of it. And if your mentor in your mentoring program is not working, then you should be asking to change. You need to find somebody that you can really relate to and have respect for and can really help coach you through your career.
Exactly. It's a huge benefit for you in the long run, but you got to invest the time. I do want to talk a little bit about getting uncomfortable, seeking feedback, establishing expectations, and handling conflict, because you're going to experience all these things in your career, whether they're at an accounting firm or any job. These things are going to come up, and you want to be able to build some skills to learn how to do this. You're going to be starting out in an accounting firm as a junior staff accountant. That's a great spot to be. It's low pressure, relatively speaking, compared to later. You get to learn a lot of things. You're there to learn. People understand you don't have the skill set there yet. You're working on it, that kind of stuff. But you want to get some things out of the way to avoid problems in the future. So one, it's always important to establish expectations. You want to ask of your firm, what are they looking from you? What billable hours goals do you need to meet? What training goals do you need to meet? Are there specifics on number of tax returns or audits you should be working on how full your schedule is? What should you be doing with your administrative time or downtime if you're out of work? How do you handle all those things? You want to try to establish expectations with the firm as much as possible on that. If you have personal obligations that you're going to have to deal with, you want to be very clear about those up front and talk about it with the firm so there's no misunderstandings there. It never hurts to clarify expectations, and both sides are going to feel more comfortable doing that. The next thing I recommend you do is getting a little uncomfortable and volunteering for new projects, harder assignments, new clients to work with, as many things as you can as possible. You want to push the boundaries of what you're doing in order to get stronger and get smarter and build your skill set.
And when you do that, that doesn't mean that the firm is expecting you to get everything right. There's certainly a learning curve. Everything that you learned in class is not really applicable until you're working on the specific projects. And you're absolutely right. Push yourself outside of that comfort zone and be reaching to learn. And don't just do, okay, well, I've done this simple tax return, so I'll just keep doing these little simple tax returns, because then you're not building your skill set. Certainly you're starting out there, but then you reach out of your comfort zone and get into those new projects and seek that feedback. You know, if you there just said, oh yeah, it was fine, then you haven't really learned from that. You want to know what you could be doing better on those projects, and that's how you continue to build your skills and continue to move on.
Exactly. You want to seek the feedback. You want to ask about the feedback, and then you want to be 100% open-minded about the feedback when it comes in, because there's going to be blind spots or things you didn't see, and you need to be understanding about it. You don't need to beat yourself up about things you did wrong. We're not going to expect those kind of, expect you to know everything. But if they say need to work on your work paper documentation, or that your time entry stuff's a little sloppy, or you're missing details because you're moving too fast, those kind of things, think about it, and then, see whether or not you believe it's accurate or not, and be open. Ask for examples, ask for specifics. You're entitled to understand, where you screwed up and that kind of stuff, and you want to know, and you're only going to make progress and move forward if you're really open about that feedback and you do learn from it. And a lot of times what I've seen is that people tend to get upset, or a little emotional when they don't do well on a project or that kind of thing. And, business is business. So you're going to need to just take the feedback, learn from it, and try and do better next time. You don't want to work at a firm where someone's berating you and verbally abusing you or beating you up or making you feel like garbage all the time, obviously. But, you're going to do things wrong, because if you make a mistake and then a senior or a manager finds it to tell you about it and you feel bad, okay, you made the mistake, you try to do it in the future. But if you make a mistake in the future when you're a manager or a partner and a client's telling you about it,
that's a little worse.
or the IRS is telling you about it, or the opposing counsel in a lawsuit's, pointing your finger at you, you're going to feel way more uncomfortable then, and you need to be able to handle that kind of stuff when it pops up. So you need to not take things too harshly when you're a staff accountant, your senior accountant. Whoever's giving you that feedback is trying to help you be better, and you just need to be honest and open with them about the feedback, and then try and learn from it and make yourself a little better.
Yeah, that's how you're going to build your skill set.
And so the last thing I mentioned is handling conflict, because that's going to come up too. You're going to have conflict with your boss potentially, or a senior or a manager a level or two above you, or a client, someone you may not like working with, potentially. It's probably going to happen at some point.
It's definitely going to happen.
And this is where you need to start building a skill set for handling conflict too, because conflicts happen in business and life in general. And it's so funny, when I came to the firm, and then I was pretty young when I joined the firm here and started working with clients directly, and you see how even sometimes grown adults behave irrationally when conflicts and that kind of thing pop up, because they've never learned those skills to handle a conflict appropriately in a professional and respectful manner. So you need to handle a conflict as professionally as possible, and you want to do that by, again, being honest with yourself and analyzing the situation. What's the conflict about? Where was the mistake made? Whose issue was it? Was it you? Was it another party? Whatever. If it was you, you need to own up to your mistake and just be totally straightforward. Apologize. Be open about what happened. Don't lay blame on someone else. If you own the mistake, and then what you're going to do to fix it in the future. Newsflash, I've made mistakes on clients' tax returns before. Every single tax return signer has made a mistake on a client's tax return. It doesn't happen a lot. It happens not very often at all, and you want to minimize that by having good, internal controls and quality control and that kind of stuff. But it does happen. When you make a mistake, you got to own it. I've had good relationships with clients where if I've made a mistake and I own it, the relationship is strengthened because I own the mistake, and then I work to actively correct it, and we come out of it better. And I've built trust with the client. So the same thing is going to be true of working with the senior or the manager or the partner or whoever else. If you own a mistake, if you made a mistake, you own it, and you say what you're going to do to not repeat it next time, you're going to build that trust. You're going to come out stronger from the mistake. The last thing you want to do is assign blame or something else and try and duck and cover on it, because then they're going to see right through that. They're going to know what's going on, and long term, you're not going to be in that firm for a long time. If someone else made the mistake, that's a little more tricky. If they're a level or two above you, you need to approach it carefully, but you need to again be open with them and explain how you view the situation, what happened. Don't be laying blame in terms of like making them feel bad for making the mistake, but just say, this is what happened. This schedule wasn't done right, and so this is the result that happened, and try and hash it through with the person. If you can try and get a person that's going to work with you and they're going to own up to their mistakes, you're going to build trust with them as well. They're going to be open to you. You're going to trust that superior a little more, and ultimately you're both going to be strengthened moving forward. If they're not owning up to it, if they're ducking and covering or whatever, and you're not being straightforward about your concerns with the issue or whatever, and you're not being truthful, again, long term, it's not going to work out. You need to be able to put yourself out there and say if you have a problem with something and made a mistake or what happened, and try and resolve the issue, and say that you want to resolve it, but try and move forward. And not put your head down and you keep working, and that person's going to get found out because they're the type of person that doesn't own their own mistakes. And if you're surrounded by those people at the firm, you need to find a new firm. But you need to just be straightforward with people and bring things to the table and talk about it and try and be the professional adult about it. And that's hard when you're first starting out to do that, but you got to learn those skills because it's going to help you ultimately in your career.
It'll help you immensely. I mean, we all make mistakes, and as you said, these are really opportunities to strengthen bonds and to learn from our mistakes and move beyond them. And I mean, you mentioned before it would be a lot worse if it's opposing counsel or the IRS or the client that's coming back to you on these mistakes. So certainly I encourage it within my audit group that if there's something that we missed last year or they're seeing an opportunity to improve the way we document something, please bring it to me. I really respect those people that will bring those opportunities to me.
Yeah, and the person you're dealing with may not know they made the mistake or may not be aware of it. And if you don't tell them and bring it to them, they're never going to know. So again, a good boss, someone you're working for is going to thank you for bringing it up. And again, you're going to strengthen that bond moving forward and ultimately come out better off.
For sure.
Let's talk about finding your home. One thing that when we get resumes, the one thing we try to avoid is when you see someone that has a year here, a year and a half there, 2 years there, another year and a half, and then a year, and they're a jumper.
Well, yeah, what do we call them? We call them jumpers.
Right. That you're not demonstrating any loyalty to the company you're with. And these days, in some industries, like in tech or whatever, it may be common to move around quite often. And I know that in general, people don't stay at a company as long as in the past. You're not going to be a lifer at most companies where you start out and have a career. You're not going to go work for the coal mine in town and retire at the coal mine in town, get your pension, that's it. Those days are gone. We get that. But you still want to try and build some tenure with a company as long as possible. You want several years, 3 to 5 years is a good amount of time with the company, hopefully longer if you find a really good one. But you want to build some time with the company and then, build your skills, learn more about the industry, learn more about your abilities and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, that kind of stuff. Build a network, meet people, maintain positive relationships. But you may find a point where it's time to move on to a different firm or a new home, some of that kind of stuff. I moved from a small firm to a mid-sized firm to here. Each step was valuable for me, and I learned things along the way, and I built additional skills, and I had to do what was best for my career, obviously. And if you maintain good relationships, people are always going to, recognize that. But ultimately, you want to look for your home long term, because you want to find a firm where you can hopefully settle down, establish your roots, really work on building your network, which is so important, and then ultimately building up a client base you can work with, because then you're going to get to that senior manager or partner level and be able to have a very good living in public accounting by having that. But you want to be able to build some roots. You want to be getting up and moving every couple of years. You're not going to establish that. You're not going to find a firm's going to want to give you a bunch of direct client assignments and contact if they don't trust you haven't been there very long yet. Because clients don't like turnover, right? You don't want to have a new accountant working with your client every year if you're a partner or a senior manager. So you want someone who's been there a while that you trust, and then you eventually give more and more client responsibility and management to that person, and ultimately that then becomes part of their book of business that they can work with. So you want to find a firm that's your home, and it's really about culture, isn't it?
Yeah, culture is really important. And one of the things that I'm looking for when I'm speaking with candidates is, somebody that has a passion for public accounting and really wants to make a career at our firm. We provide a lot of opportunities to be able to move up because we want to keep those staff engaged and we want to build their career. And it's great to have them long-term in our firm. I was similar where I worked at Ernst & Young for 6 years. I did some time in private, and then I came back to public accounting and found my home. And I've been here for 9 years, and I've really built my network, built my connections, and made partner. And it's something that I'm really proud of, and I'm just so happy with our team here.
Yeah, you find a good home where you mesh culture-wise, where you have similar values and principles and that kind of thing, and you're setting yourself up for success in the future. You're going to have a good career at that place. But the values and the principles and that kind of thing are really important because that's going to help you overcome the various disagreements and differences of opinion and that kind of stuff. That's going to happen at any firm. No firm is going to be perfect. You're going to have things you disagree with or don't like as much or whatever, and that's part of the cost of being part of a firm. If you want to go on your own and do it all your way, you can, and there's pros and cons to that as well. But if you want to be part of a team, you're going to have to learn to work with people and capitalize on strengths, help minimize weaknesses, learn to resolve differences, set expectations, handle conflicts, all the kinds of things we talked about. Those are all skills that you're trying to build to ultimately serve you well. I keep saying ultimately like 1,000 times, but you know what I mean. It's going to serve you well in the long term where you're going to be extremely successful. No matter where you end up, you need to build those skills and find your home.
I ultimately agree. No. I couldn't resist.
Anything else you can think of that as a staff recruit or interviewee people should be thinking about that we haven't covered here?
We've covered a lot today. I think that this is a really good introduction into public accounting and how they get their foot in the door and what they should be looking for in a firm. And, if there are specific questions, please feel free to send an email to resumes@wheelercpa.com, and that goes right to our recruiting committee. And, we're available for questions as well. That's all for today's episode of the Debit This, Credit That podcast. As always, if you have any questions, you can contact your Wheeler Accountants Preparer or submit a question online at our website in the Ask Wheeler section at the bottom of the page. Please remember to follow us on social media for regular updates at Wheeler CPAs and on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thanks for listening as we help you solve for accounting.